TTB Music Podcast.
So where were we? Before we were really interrupted. Hello, we're back again. New albums this month from the Prodigy, Todd, Rundgren, Halestorm, Marling, Marina and the Diamonds, and Waxahatchee.
Bless you.
Indeed, but we're going to start off with the biggie, which is the 6th album from the Prodigy, The Day's My Enemy, and yet another comeback album, supposedly, for the Prodigy.
It's funny you should mention it. The Prodigy, The Day's My Enemy. This album, I saw described somewhere as the comeback album, which you've alluded to quite clearly. And I thought, that's very unfair, really, because the last album was the comeback album as well, and the album before that. But they said, no, this was definitely the album that came back after 2 disappointing albums.
And we reviewed the last album, didn't we?
We did. And it's funny, because that album and this album are...
similar.
Kind of similar. Okay, let's get into the nub of it. The Prodigy, The Day Is My Enemy. This is their 6th album in 25 years, which, you know, is pretty...
Lazy.
I was going to say impressive. I was going to say impressive that they, you know, that the Prodigy are still, you know, doing something that sounds fresh. Please ignore my previous comment. I'll come back to that.
I'll come back to that.
I'm sure you will. I find this album actually, it has some very, very good, and I would say almost classic Prodigy moments on it, which I think the last album was actually lacking.
Maybe.
Yeah, there were 1 or 2 lead singles off the last album, but I found that there weren't as many moments, and there were more moments on this, particularly if you're Prodigy fans. Throughout, you know, there were tracks. I mean, The Day Is My Enemy, Wild Frontier, which I think is probably the best track they've done in 10 years.
It is one of the better tracks on the album.
It's one of the better tracks on the album. But even towards the end of the album, some of the instrumentation around tracks like Roadblocks and Get Your Fight On, and Invisible Sun and Wall of Death. Wall of Death? Yeah, Wall of Death. Yeah. It kind of took me back to that, there's that coda at the end of Music for the Jilted Generation. Alright, this was nowhere near as good, but it still had that sort of that closure that album had in terms of sort of doing something that was a bit more instrumental, something a little bit different to the rest of the album. However, the quality of some of the other tracks unfortunately makes the rest of this album quite patchy. There are a couple of pieces towards the beginning. I think it was Ibiza. All right, I got the point of Ibiza. Yeah, it was ranting about very rich people making dance music going to Ibiza on holiday.
Yeah, and also basically just showing up, sticking a CD in, and then pissing off and not doing it, and just going woo woo with the hands in the air.
No, I completely get that, but even that as a rant now sounds a little bit dated. If you see what I'm saying.
I do, but however, I think one of the funniest moments of the album is the fact that that's then followed by Destroy,
which
the most Ibiza-like track on the album.
Now, whether that's deliberate, I don't know.
I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Give them the benefit of the doubt. You know, so I wasn't so sure about that. And then I think it was Nasty, which is track number 2. One of the
Firestarter, as we call it.
Well, I was going to say worse than that. I mean, you may recall, and this is going back a long time. Oh, maybe not so long. There was a track that they did that got to number 1 when they did their first of the many comebacks in the 21st century. And they then ditched the entire album because the track went to number 1, but Liam Howlett wasn't happy with it, and the name of the track currently escapes me. And then he ditched the album, and then we got Always Outnumbered, Never Outgunned.
Yeah.
Which some fans really like, but some, you know, it's a divisive album. I felt that this was just a return to the sort of stuff he was trying to avoid doing 10 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of that is my issue with the album. I've purposely put a quote on our notes for this.
Oh, I wonder what that was about.
Yeah.
Well, I know what that was about. I haven't read it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a quote from Liam Howlett earlier on this year where he said, "Dance music at the moment is so fucking dead. Producers are too safe. They rely on being retro. It's fucking bollocks. There's no pushing forward anymore." obviously not bothering to take his own advice when it comes to pushing forward and not being retro when it comes to releasing records, because this does sound like it could have come out in the 90s. You know, it's exactly the same drum beat and drum and bass loops they were using back on Jilted Generation and Fat Little Land. And because of that's my issue with this record. It's not that it's a bad album per se, as you say. There's some okay stuff on it. Yeah. But cause I really like one of the tracks you didn't mention. Talking of instrumental stuff.
The acoustic stuff.
Yeah, Beyond the Death Ray, which is a pure instrumental track.
Yeah.
I think it's possibly the standout track of the album for me, along with Wild Frontier. But the rest of it is just too much like, you know, I know in a way it's a bit like saying, slagging off AC/DC for making another AC/DC record. But by the same token, speaking of the new AC/DC record, there are a couple of good tunes on that. However, if I was going to listen to AC/DC, I would still put on another old album of AC/DC's, not the current one. Yeah. And the same is with what I've got with this. I'm thinking, if I'm going to put an album on, I'm going to put on Experience, Fat Land, or Music of the Jilted Generation, not this.
That's because they're all classic albums.
Yeah. This, you know, having listened to it start to finish 4 times,
Ooh.
I can't imagine wanting to listen to it start to finish again. The odd track here, yes. So I can imagine doing what all the kids and everyone does now, and
pulling the iTunes generation.
Exactly, pulling out a couple of tracks onto a kind of playlist.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine listening to the album again.
No, it lacks that classic album that you certainly got from their first 3 albums. As I say, I think this one stacks up better than the previous album, Invaders Must Die.
Possibly.
Which, with the exception of Invaders Must Die and Omen, I struggle really to...
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember the name of that single that even Liam Howlett...
That was a hit.
You know, ditched. But, this for me wasn't... I wanted it to be much more, but it wasn't. But I guess it was all right.
Okay, moving on. I know. Moving on to the 25th 25th solo studio album. That's harder to say than I thought it was. From Todd Rundgren, Global. And I've got a good quote here as well, because the quote kind of sums up part of what I feel about this particular record. He's talking about the last album, which we reviewed.
You've got a quote for each of these records.
Yeah. He said his last album, State was new territory for me in not the sense that I was uncomfortable meddling around and fiddling with things and plugging things into other things.
It's talking about music, right?
Yeah. But from a standpoint of suddenly being where it was at. This was my catch-up record. And once I'd done that, I'd kind of assimilated things, knew better what I wanted to do with the things I'd learned. Then I had more of a focus about what this record should be. And I think that pretty much sums up the difference between Global and the difference between State. I got the feeling when we reviewed State a couple of years ago, an album that I still quite liked, but you know, it's still only managed to crop in at number 20 in my list of best albums that year, was the fact that he was trying a bit too hard to EDM his sound and was more interested in getting sounds in rather than actually writing songs and making the arrangement fit the song rather than the other way around. With this album, I think it's definitely the songs that have come first, and then he's decided to add stuff to it. So I think as a result, this is a much more pleasing album than State. Rather than go through every single track, because that'd be boring for everybody and won't give you a chance to speak, I will say that the highlights for me are where it concentrates on the more kind of soul aspect of Mr. Rundgren's performance, so kind of ballady things. So there's a couple of ballads, Blind, which has a lovely saxophone solo in the middle, Soothe, which for anyone, any kind of budding manager out there who's looking for a surefire hit for their up-and-coming artist, I would nab this for a cover version myself, frankly. Fate, in a similar vein. But then there's also some more kind of upbeat kind of stuff in that's bringing some of the EDM. So Everybody, the opening track, is a fun, ridiculously catchy sing-along song. My favourite track on the album at the moment is probably Rise, which is track 3 on the album, which again incorporates kind of EDM influences without overpowering the track. There are some issues with other tracks on the album, but I shall let you have a...
How many albums of his have we reviewed now?
if we include the classic one, probably 4 or 5.
Oh yeah, we did the classic one as well. All right, not including the classic one. Let me disclude myself. I think this is the best one we've done.
Yeah, probably is.
For a number of years. I think this is a standout record. I really enjoyed it. I didn't mind State, but for all those, I agree completely with your appraisal of it, your reappraisal of it just now. It was very much, it's a lot of EDM with a Todd in the middle. This felt like a Todd Rundgren album.
Yeah.
That actually perfectly balanced everything people like about Todd and pop music, dance music.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought it was consistent throughout. That was the word I was searching for a moment ago. Not solid. Consistent. Consistent throughout. I particularly like Flesh and Blood. Everybody and Flesh and Blood.
I thought you might like Flesh and Blood. There's definitely a bit of Pet Shop Boys and Depeche Mode present in there.
I'm not going to mention it. I'm not even going to go ping through this review. Oops. And even some of the other stuff that he does, which it always brings a smile to my face, like Global Nation, Skyscraper.
Yeah, so Skyscraper, which is pure Peter Gabriel period,
exactly.
80s pop.
Yeah, and This Island Earth, his musings about life beyond, and
yeah,
and there's some brilliant lyrics in here as always as well. But no, I thought this was I really enjoyed this record.
Earth Mother's a bit ropey then, let's be honest. Good intentions, but
very well intentioned,
but a bit cheesy.
Yeah. That was that. Yeah. Holy Land.
Holy Land.
Is that one you have a problem with?
No, I did have a problem with initially because like the at the start I was thinking, you've got to be kidding me. But however,
yes.
It wears you down after a few listens.
It does. And even Terra Firma's alright.
Yeah, I quite like Terra Firma.
So as I say, I can't really find a track on this album which I didn't enjoy to some extent or other. So really, this is a great Todd Rundgren record. As always, I caveat that with, if you're not a fan of Todd already, or you don't know who Todd is, probably not going to appeal to new fans, but
yeah,
previous fans will love it.
True. Right, we change musical stylings and move on to the third album from American rock band Halestorm, Into the Wild. Fronted by two members of the Hale family hence the name, but are led by lead singer and guitarist Lizzie Hale. So, did this rock your world, Pete?
No. I didn't enjoy this one at all. It starts with Scream. It's very heavy. I thought, okay, right, we're on a heavy one. Right, okay, fair enough. And then it just sort of disappears down a rabbit hole. Yeah,
yes.
I've read your quote.
It does, doesn't it?
It really does though, because it sort of starts heavy, then it kind of goes a little bit alt, middle of the road, rock, alt, indie maybe, and then it just sort of kind of tapers off towards the end.
It is a weird one. I
couldn't figure out, is it Christian rock as well, or is it just heavily dependent on faith-based lyrics?
Yeah, possibly. It is weird because
describe Depeche Mode as Christian rock, but
no,
you would say there's a lot of faith-based lyrics in there.
This is very true. Yeah, it is very split between kind of stadium rockers and slow ballads. And it is kind of very much a half and half thing. Which if you were a fan of kind of hard rock music, you would probably be wanting it to be mostly hard rock with a couple of ballads thrown in. But this is kind of half and half. And in fact, some of the ballads. I will say before I was the answer to the album that I think Lizzie Hale has a great voice.
Yes.
And a couple of the ballads, you could be listening to Pink or Shakira almost singing it, because they're that kind of poppy.
Yeah.
Particularly What Sober Couldn't Say near the end of the album is very kind of poppy. I can imagine it being remixed as a kind of pop version and stuff. So I kind of agree. I think. There are moments where I kind of thought, oh yeah, this is all right. So I quite liked Apocalyptic, and towards the end, because that was quite a good rock song, and Amen, I didn't mind either earlier on as well, because it's good in the kind of stadium rock way. Dear Daughter, kind of, I thought lyrically was quite more interesting ballads on the album. But yeah, overall it's a bit kind of meh.
Yeah.
Without kind of, you can't, as you say, it kind of like starts to do something and then suddenly stops. So there's nothing kind of grabbing you and anchoring you into the album.
If it starts with the please forgive the pun and the rock reference. It starts with the volume up on 11, but it just gradually cranks down a point each time.
Yes.
In terms of interest, and I think what the album could have really done with was perhaps another couple of sort of louder numbers towards the end, but maybe that's because I've fallen asleep.
Ah, sad times indeed.
No.
Okay, so we move on to fifth album from
Probably should.
Laura Marling, called Short Movie, and I liked this quote, so I am going to read this one out. Interview she gave in a couple of months ago. I wrote this record on electric guitar, but I play electric like I do acoustic. It's not going to be groundbreaking. I've managed to resist the EDM. Which I thought was highly amusing. And accurately describes the album as well. Because, yes, there is more electric guitar on this album, or some electric guitar on this album as opposed to previous albums, but by the same token, it's very much identifiable still as a folky Laura Marling album.
Yeah.
This is one of a couple of the records this month that was kind of slow to kind of work its magic over me, actually. It was probably third listen before I kind of went, okay, I get it, yeah, I'm in. And that didn't even happen at all with Laura Marling's last album, Once I Was an Eagle, which I still haven't really ever kind of got to grips with.
Yeah, agree.
It's clear that you can tell immediately that she lives in LA now, because there's definitely a kind of West Coast vibe to some of the arrangements, inflection in her vocal stylings on a few tracks as well, particularly things like Strange, that some people might find annoying. But I think overall the kind of sound shows and songwriting shows growth and progression, and it gets off to a cracking start. I think the first half of the album I think is terrific. Starting off with a kind of echoey, reverby, kind of Joni Mitchell-esque kind of Warrior as the opening track, and then into kind of False Hope, which is the first example of the new electric guitar Marling, which I love how it just starts with the electric guitar and her voice, and then the band kind of kick in and the second verse kind of thing. That's probably my favourite track on the album actually at the moment. And then you get a kind of more Nick Drake-y, acoustic-y number, I Feel Your Love. And there's a song later on the album, Easy, which is in a similar vein. So I think the first half of it is really, really good. When it gets to Gurdjieff's Daughter, which does start off sounding like a cover of Something Swing by Dire Straits, it's probably my least favourite track on the album, and I think after that the album's a bit more shaky and inconsistent. But I do like, again, we're back in more Joni Mitchell's territory with How Can I, which is a really lovely track. And the final couple of tracks are quite nice as well. So overall, I thought, yeah, it's a good album, and definitely, like I said, it's one that first couple of listens I liked False Hope and a couple of other things, but wasn't really sure. But then the third listen, it kind of seemed to kind of click into place, and I kind of thought, actually, there's more good on here than I was originally thinking.
Yeah. How Can I? It's actually one of my favourite tracks on the album.
It's a lovely track.
Anyway. Completely agree with you. It took me about 3 or 4 listens. I listened to the Prodigy album 3 or 4 times. 4 times, I think. And every listen was a slight disappointment. This was the complete opposite. Every listen was a joy, compounded on top of the last listen. In fact, I went from sort of not sure how to take this album at all, to actually finding it was one of my favourites of this particular podcast. You're right. The last album just never clicked. I always felt cold listening to that record.
Same here.
I didn't connect with it at all. And even though now she's sort of moved to electric guitar and adopted, you'll love the parallel, the Bob Dylan sort of accent there.
Indeed.
See what I did there? It's still it really connected with me, this record. I don't know if you picked up on the. You've listed all the best tracks. I'm not going to go down that route. I don't know if you picked up on the whole. There was a journey across this record as well. I felt the English girl was very much stranded in the East Coast to begin with, And gradually, as the record progressed, I don't know if you noticed, there's sort of a geographical pointing west, to a point actually about 2/3 in where she actually does say in one of the lyrics, "It's time for me to turn back east."
Yes, because there are some clear references to New York and stuff.
There's references that start to New York, but then there's definitely references back to towards England towards the end of the album. So I felt that this album was very much a soundtrack to a period in her life. It felt like she'd been on a journey.
X Factor will be happy.
Yeah, exactly. And actually felt the record itself feels like a journey as well, a very rewarding one too.
Well,
happy holidays.
Praise indeed.
Yeah.
So, we now have another returning person to the podcast. Someone whose first album we reviewed. The second album we didn't. Although the second album she was sort of pretending to be somebody else. So this is either the third or second album, depending on how you're going to view it, from Marina and the Diamonds, called Froot, purposely misspelt, although it does mean exactly the same thing. And funny enough, talking about that last experience, I've got a quote from her where she said, "I always get the impression the media are like, she's not really an artist, someone else is creating that." And with this album I wanted to make a point about writing the whole thing, because then you can't say anything, you know I'm the song creator, and there aren't many of those artists anymore.
Yeah.
I think that was because on the last album she'd worked with lots of writers and lots of producers, and basically got an album that was sounding like it was written by lots of different people and produced by lots of different people.
We didn't review that, did we?
No. We didn't miss out by not reviewing it either. It was a very, very patchy affair. But we both were big fans of the debut album.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, has this reunited that or not?
Do you know what? I listened to this record the first time I listened to it, and I thought, yeah, it's all right. But then the more I listened to it, a bit like the last album we just reviewed, the Laura Marling record, it just got more and more rewarding. Again, someone else has been on a journey, I feel. This was certainly a lot earthier.
This is definitely a breakup album, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the blue to the previous album's red. This was a lot earthier in terms of its content, in terms of the heartbreak, in terms of the sort of sorry and very sad state of affairs. I felt very lonely, Marina.
Just want to give her a hug.
You just wanted to sort of give her a cup of tea. You know, I mean, I did smile because particularly towards the end, I think it was the track Weeds, and she talks about, you know, clearly being in her mid-20s and having loved so many times and just wanting to love one more time. And I did smile because I thought people in their 20s, oh bless them. You know, it was like desolate period of, you know, you think you've wasted all your opportunities and yet you never know what might be around the corner. It did make me smile in that respect, and want me to put my arm around her and say it will be all right. But yeah, this was definitely a grittier album and an earthier album, and I think her debut was brilliant. Her debut was a brilliant pop album.
Yeah.
You know, it had some great tracks on it. This was a great artist record. This was a really good album. In terms of, I'm not so sure how the fans will take it. You know, the converse of other albums we've reviewed. I mean, hopefully, won't. I think you're right. I think they go with it.
I think stylistically and musically, it is definitely clear progression in. It's a more mature record, as they say in the business.
A more mature record, absolutely. You know, maybe some of those younger fans are now more mature themselves and more battle hardened. So hopefully it will appeal. But there were some great tracks on here. I'll let you run through your favourites, because I have to say I really enjoyed this album from start to finish. Again, another consistent record.
Well, when I said Laura Marling, there were two albums that kind of crept up on me. This was similarly the second one. Again, it was kind of
second or third listen.
It was third listen for me. I mean, I don't get it wrong. On first listen, I liked some of the more obvious stuff. So I liked kind of Forget and Blue and Happy and stuff like that immediately kind of jumps out at you. But other stuff took a while, and I was thinking, this album. First few listens, I wasn't quite sure if it hung together as an album or if it was a bit too disparate. But now I actually think it does, and I think, as you said, the kind of theme of kind of breakup and loss and stuff, which permeates it, could be quite depressing if you sit there and read all the lyrics, because there are some, and don't get me wrong, there's some very good lyrics in it. You know, I like line Savages. I mean, Savages talks about rape and various other things like that, but I like just the line, underneath it all were just savages hidden behind shirts, ties and marriages.
Yes.
I just thought,
brilliant.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And also on Can't Pin Me Down, she's talking about the whole idea of, you know, it's almost like feminism and what it means to be a feminist and stuff, and she kind of goes, you know, do you want me to write a feminist anthem? I'm happy cooking dinner in the kitchen for my husband. The kind of thing that, you know, you don't have to be out on the streets burning your bras to be a feminist. You can still kind of do normal things that you would do, that people go, oh, it's not feminist, do cooking tea for your husband. Yeah. Kind of stuff. So I kind of like that, and she just have a really good way with words and a really good way with melody, and obviously on title track Froot still obviously has a way with just being bonkers. Yes, clearly. Which was good to see.
That was good bonkers.
Yeah, it's good to see she hasn't lost the bonkersness.
No, the bonkers were still there, and so, you know, and it wasn't all dreary and the solitude, because actually the tracks Savages and Froot, they were upbeat musically.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of upbeat.
Some good pop tunes on here.
Forget's very upbeat.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, there's some good tunes on here too.
Yes. So if you bought the first album,
you will like this second album.
Go buy it.
It's the third album. Sorry.
Yeah. Both.
Yeah, made the point there.
Yeah.
Good.
So we finish up with another third album, this time from Waxahatchee.
Bless you.
Yeah. It's not really old, is it?
No.
Which is singer-songwriter Katie Crutchfield. Now I liked her. I didn't hear the first album, but I quite liked the second album, which came out I think a couple of years ago. So it made it kind of interested to kind of check out this one. And it's got very, very good reviews. It's probably the best reviewed album on our list if you look at the things. And it's an interesting record. It's short, it's one thing to start off. It's lots of 2.5 minute pop songs of sorts. Again, there's a lot going on, funnily enough, about relationships and breakups and heartache on here as well. Yeah. The album's kind of bookended by 2 longer tracks and slightly more interesting tracks as well. So they're both Breathless at the start and what's the one at the end? Bonfire. Both have that kind of shoegaze, low fuzz droneness to them, but but still quite sparse tracks. Yeah. And quite actually, I particularly think it works best on Breathless, which is the track at the start, which I really, really like. On top of that, you've got the kind of perfect kind of indie pop of kind of Under the Rock and Grey Hair, and then some Casio type pop of is it La Luce and Stay On By Noon. Which has also got a good line in it, which I liked, which is, you know, I can imitate some kind of love, or if I could see it for what it is and stop kidding myself. And I thought, yeah, I quite like that kind of sound-wise overall. It's a bit if you kind of imagine kind of Dinosaur Jr., early Liz Phair around kind of Exile Guyville period, and the Breeders, because her voice most sounds like Kim Deal than anything else. Then that's kind of what it sounds like. I'm not as big a fan of it as the reviewers are, has to be said. For me, it doesn't quite hold together as well as I would want it to. But the fact that the songs are short, as I said, does mean that it does zip by reasonably quickly. So I think it's a classic, solid album.
I'm inclined to agree. It does zip by, although for me it didn't really leave much of an impression. So I've probably not been as taken with it as yourself. Perhaps I need to give it a couple more listens, but it certainly didn't have that impact of those previous 2 records we've reviewed. So you know, yeah, it's vocally she's brilliant. You know, musically, all those things you've described in terms of that lo-fi indie feel, a great sort of lo-fi album. But for me, just didn't quite hit the mark. And maybe, and I'll put my hand up here and say maybe I do need to give it another listen, because clearly I've missed something.
I should say there's a prize for using the symbol for less than as a title for a song.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That must be a first, musically speaking.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it's somewhere around about there that my interest started to wane. Although I have to say, the album did close very well. The last 3 tracks, particularly Half Moon and Bonfire, as you say, what a great way to finish an album.
Right, so that's another podcast done then. So,
great way to finish a podcast.
Album of the podcast.
Well, I really wanted it to be the Prodigy's "The Day Is My Enemy" because I'm a huge fan, and actually, despite what I said during the review, not so much about this record, but I have liked all their albums. But this one just didn't quite feel right.
I agree.
So it's a toss-up really between 3 other records. But I'm going to let you vote for Todd.
So again, I'm the same. I do think the Todd album's a good record and a grower. But I'm sure you're going to say the same. But also I think the Laura Marling and the Marina and Diamonds albums are both really, really strong records that reward listening.
I think Marina nicks it for me.
I think if I was going to pick between the two, I'd annoyingly probably have to say the same thing.
Oh, blimey. Okay.
But clearly it's Todd. So, next podcast, we'll have more Todd, unbelievably. I know.
Outrageous.
It is outrageous.
I want my money back.
And we'll also have a new album from Martin Gore, the return of...
Forgotten about that.
Yeah, the return of Blur.
Maybe I'll come.
And 3 others to be chosen.
Oh, that sounds good.
So until then...
Nice. See you then.
You've been listening to the CTTV Music Podcast.